Right, I think we're recording now. Can you see the little red dot?
I can.
Excellent. I should introduce this is a good friend of mine who wishes to remain anonymous, so we won't give her a name, we'll just give her a code name, which is, what is it?
I mean, I want to be like Fleabag.
Oh,
She's
so,
amazing. But
um,
that's not good. I didn't even think about a code name. I was just thinking, oh, she doesn't have a name. Her name's Fleabag. That's awesome.
okay, well, we'll call you Pink Tiger then. Pink Tiger?
Oh, right.
Okay?
Right. Do we want to give them the backstory behind that name?
No, not really, but that's your
Okay.
name, Pink Tiger. Exciting. What are you drinking, Pink Tiger?
Well, I'm in South Korea, so I'm drinking black raspberry wine. It's actually really good.
Mm,
So,
black
they
raspberry
tell me
wine.
it's really strong, but I'm not so sure.
I
I'm
am
not so sure.
drinking a Coke Zero from
Delightful.
Atlanta, Georgia. Where are you from?
Yes. ATL.
Where are you from?
Atlanta.
You're from Atlanta too. What a coincidence. Mm.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Right, so I am going to ask you a series of questions that I think are provocative but are asked in sincerity because I'm staring across the pond at America going, good golly gosh, things have got a bit loopy over there, haven't they? Uh, so, what I want to ask is, what do you think has gone on? What has happened? There's a nice broad one for you.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you be more specific?
Okay.
Like, what, yeah, what hasn't been happening? What you mean, like what happened today? Do you mean what's happened in the last few weeks? Do you mean just like current events? Like what?
That's such a good point because I'm struggling to keep up. As someone who avidly follows the news, I can't keep up. Okay, I'll give you a very specific question,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I could find the answer to this on my own. But can you explain to me, because I understand that this is a very big point of contention, why is the phrase Black Lives Matter key to this, as opposed to the alternative, All Lives Matter?
Okay. So the first thing I would like to say
Hmm.
is that I am a friend of Simon. Simon and I met overseas. Um, and I am in no way an expert, right? I think I should give just a little bit of backstory, right?
Sure.
So I am not a political science major. I'm not a politician. I'm not a journalist. I'm not any of those things. I'm just a girl from Georgia, a white girl from Georgia,
Hmm.
um, who's grown up in the middle of race relations, which is what is when you're in the deep south and what is when you're in America, just in general, just not something you can get around.
Hmm.
So anyway, anything that I would say, I could only say like from my point of view or from things my friends have said to me.
Sure.
Because the biggest thing to understand, so this is probably like look at it from this lens if you can. This is the lens everything I say should be looked at through. Is
Yes.
that um, I cannot explain the Black experience,
Hmm.
right? It sounds really obvious, because I'm not Black. So I will never truly understand what it is to be discriminated against in that way, to feel all the feelings that they're having, to go through all of the anxiety and the turmoil and the despair and the terror and the exhaustion. I don't know what that is, right? um, I think it's a really hard, and I am getting to your question, but
No,
I just want to
please.
kind of, because this conversation, all of this paints kind of the lens to which I'm going to answer all of your questions, right? So I also think on one side, so I can never understand the experience. I also think that on the other side, nobody can devalue another person's experience. Like I can't tell you, Simon, what
Hmm.
your experience is,
Hmm.
in life, because it's
Yes,
not mine. Just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean I can invalidate yours. Do you see what I mean?
I do see what you mean.
So basically what happens is you have people like me, right, who grew up in the deep south, who grew up in communities, school systems where by the time I was 10 I was a minority, meaning it was majority African American or Black.
Hmm.
And so my kind of whole upbringing was having them tell me their experience, which was not mine at all. I was like, oh really, oh really, oh really, you know and then me trying to be sensitive to something that I've never experienced. And then I also have this other interesting thing where you run into people maybe like yourself, for this example, or, you know, Yankees, people in the North, not Americans, people in the North, where they've never really hung out with Black people or been around them or spent a significant time around them, grew up with them. So they are completely alien to the experience. So anyway,
Yes.
to answer your question through my lens, right? Black Lives Matter is basically saying, and I know it sounds really silly or simple, I should say, my life matters and it happens to be Black, but my life does matter. The problem is, and this is what people say all the time, when you say all lives matter, right? Which,
Yes.
you know, duh. When you say all lives matter, it negates the Black experience. It tries to make the Black experience equal to all, but it's not. And we all kind of know that, right? It's less than in many ways for, again, hundreds of different reasons. So when they say Black Lives Matter, they're literally just saying, I don't want to matter more than you. I'm not saying I'm above you. I'm saying I matter at all. I'm saying I'm not below you. I'm saying that your life, your white police officer life is just as valuable as my Black stay-at-home mom life, whoever those people are. My life matters just as much as yours does. So that's all it's saying. I think people get really upset, which by the way blows my mind. I don't even know why people would get like contest Black Lives Matter at all. But when they say, well, what about everybody else? And it's like, but we're not talking about everybody else. We're talking about the people who are having the problem. And people use examples like if you broke your arm and you went into the hospital and they put your entire body in a cast, but they left your arm out. And we like to do shootings. We love to shoot people. So we like to say thoughts and prayers because we won't do gun reform.
Sure.
So for your arm that's broken, we'll be like thoughts and prayers, but we're not actually going to give it the same acknowledgement as the rest of the body.
Right.
If you're in a neighborhood and a house is on fire, right? If we send the fire trucks to every other house, right? And then maybe we get to the house on fire. Maybe we ran out of water. Who knows? It's that thing where they're like, I have a serious problem and I just want to be here. I'm not even asking to be above you. I just want to be equal.
Yeah, those were excellent metaphors. Broken arm, put your entire body in a cast. You've probably negated the point of medical attention at that point. Excellent metaphor. Now, you have described the Black experience as hard. What makes...
I've described my understanding of the Black experience. I know, but it really is technical. It gets technical.
No,
because this is what pisses Black people off. Black people get pissed off when they're like, let me tell you about your experience. That's why the wording is so important. But yes, go ahead. I know what you mean.
No, I mean, it is phenomenally technical, and it is obvious to me when I look across at the news reports from America that something has happened there that has been coming for a while. And one of the things that I wanted to know about is what, in your view, makes that experience of life as a Black person in America difficult? What are the frustrations that they would face?
You know what? So basically, there are hundreds of books on this,
Sure.
endless movies, endless news articles. I mean, you could just kind of go forever and ever and ever. I could list a few things, but I'm never even going to touch all of the things, right? But there's a reason we call it systematic racism, right? It's not the police. Like a lot of people, you know, obviously there's a lot of anger at the police. We've seen all the things that are constantly happening, right? But even just the things that have happened in the last week. But that's really not it, right? That's the pawn in the bigger game. Who controls the police, you know? And I don't mean it in a conspiracy theorist way, right? Of, oh, you know, look over here. What I mean is that systematic racism means the entire system, right? So they started off as slaves, then they were freed, right? But then every other way that you could set up a society was kind of blocked from them, right?
Hmm.
So sharecropping, to separate but equal, to them not being allowed to purchase homes in certain areas. In America, the school systems are taxed based on the property values. So if you're not allowed to purchase a home in a certain area and you can only purchase it in another area, if the property values are naturally less money is going to the school system, so the education is going to be poorer, right? You
Hmm.
have private prisons where actually we make money. It is profitable to take people's lives away and send them to jail. You can just see it with just general bias, confirmation bias, like little things that you don't think about. Like, you know, we'll have a white shooter walk into a black church, right? I think it's Dylan Roof or whatever. He walks in and he kills all these black people, and they, with a, you know, machine gun, and the police come in and they're like, oh, you know, maybe you're mentally ill. Let's put a bulletproof vest on you and let's gently walk you out of this building where you've murdered like 12 people in a freaking church. And like, we're going to get you right to due process and all this kind of stuff, right? Where they pull over George Floyd and they put a knee on his neck because they think he had, wasn't even like confirmed, right? Like written a bad check or something, and now he's dead. Like it's this kind of thing that they're talking about when they say my life matters. Why is this so hard for you to understand? Why, and why are there all of these systems in place? So many things, you know, like I have people in my life I'm very close to who, you know, were told specific things to wear and not to wear going out because one's white and one's black. I'm sorry, you're black, you know, you can't wear that hoodie outside. Well, why? Well, because someone could think you're dangerous, you're a threat. That's the other thing, you know? Like, okay, might be, I don't know how this is gonna go, but do you know the movie Zootopia?
I'm
You know how, you
vaguely
know how
familiar.
I like cartoon movies. Okay. So
Sure.
there's this movie Zootopia. It's fabulous. I was almost Officer Bunny Hops last year for Halloween. It's phenomenal. But basically in the movie Zootopia, what it's all about is it's all about basically the carnivore animals, right, versus the herbivore animals, right? And basically
Mhm.
what happens is they all live in peace and harmony, blah, blah, blah. And then one day all the carnivores start literally killing the herbivores. And this doesn't happen in Zootopia because it's cartoon and everybody's happy. And
Right.
so what happens is there's this big media storm about how carnivores are naturally dangerous and they're born that way and they need to be treated differently and we do need to lock them up and we do need to police them more severely because they're dangerous, right? But then at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, you just find out it was a couple of random people who ate some flowers that made them crazy, like they were on mushrooms or something. They lost their mind and, you know, they did a little damage. But it was the flowers in the first place. And guess who was behind it? One of the little sheep, one of the little herbivores. I
So
mean, I'm
from
just saying, there's, I don't know how to go, how far to go down this rabbit hole, but you know what I mean? It's basically everything really is like, let me ask you a counter question, right? What are some of the things that you think that being Black makes your life easier? Like, what's one of the things about being Black that makes your life just generally easier than being white?
um well, again, I haven't lived that life, so that would be very hard to answer. If I was to guess, something that would be personally I'd find beneficial is that maybe a sense of fraternity, maybe a sort of closeness to people of your minority. I know that minorities experience more of a kinship with one another, so I could point to that. But
Mm,
you're quite right. Beyond that, which is only born out of being the minority and being marginalized, I can't really think of anything else that could possibly be considered to be a positive, other
right,
than being a human being is a wonderful thing in and of itself.
right.
Um, so looking at the situation, one of the things I've noticed is that it's so predictable what people will focus on. If you turn on like a Stephen Colbert, he will be talking about the oppression, and if you turn on a Fox News or a Ben Shapiro, he will be talking about the damage that's been caused and the mystery of how looting a Louis Vuitton store actually solves anything. And
Mm-hmm.
I find that so predictable. You might as well not even watch because you can almost guess what people's particular takeaway is on this. And I'm wondering what this says about the health of America and where you've got to, where the two sides have look into the same facts, but derive completely separate narratives from them. And
Mm-hmm.
how many of, so this would be a question to you, how many of your friends sit very comfortably on the opposite side of the political divide to you? Do you have any of those friends? Are you happy to have those friends? Or is that in and of itself contentious?
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent question. And it's funny, I actually just read this article on Vox the other day of kind of the comparing and contrasting the differences between what's happening right now and then the civil rights movement in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the biggest things it talked about is that in the 60s, it cited that it felt it was more volatile just because we had so many leader deaths, right? JFK and MLK and Malcolm X and just so much turmoil. Although it did cause some, amendments to be introduced, or Civil Rights Act, excuse me. So
Sure.
that's nice. But basically, one of the things the article talked about is it said that people, even if they were polarized then, they were more polarized on how to get to the same place. So they still kind of, maybe they disagreed on how to get somewhere, right? But they still wanted to go to the same place. And I think one of the worst things about our situation, well, obviously, is our president. It's been horrific since the second he won. I remember I stayed up all night for that. It was like 2:30 a.m. that they announced it. I was like numb all the next day. It was so horrifying. But we have no leadership. And one of the things is he loves to say fake news. He loves to say that, none of the information you're hearing has any merit, which makes you, I guess, second guess everything or doesn't really help with journalism in general. But
Yes.
we've created these kind of echo chambers. I'm sure in many ways, I mean, it's TV, but it's also social media, right? The things that you search, you get more of that and it comes back to you. So you end up in these echo chambers, but it's not just politics anymore. I think that's the thing that's really hard for people to maybe understand why we're so polarized is now it's become so much more personal. It's like values. It's your value system, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
any sense.
Yeah,
So
it
for
does.
example, right, when you say, let's say Donald Trump, when you say, oh, I voted for Donald Trump because, I think he's a great businessman and my stock options are going to be much better with Trump, right? But then someone like me hears that and I go, okay, but he sexually assaults women, and so that's how I'm feeling. And so I'm going, okay, so your stock options are more important than my bodily autonomy, than my rights, than my feeling of being safe. This is just an example, right? This
Sure.
is an example to explain kind of how we've become so so polarized, because you have people kind of more on the conservative side who are just saying like, as always is, all the immigrants are ruining everything, the young people are ruining everything, but they're making it personal. They're like, they're taking our jobs, right? Are they?
Mm-hmm.
Are they? Or are we just in the age of the internet? And the factory worker is over. It's over now, and then you have the people on the far left who are just saying, wow, you really don't care if you're not willing to do gun reform, but like I can send my kid to school and my kid can get shot at 6 years old. And you're going to say to me, thoughts and prayers. I can be Black and I can be murdered in the street. And you're going to be like, well, oops. Like how many times is it? So that's why it's so much more personal than just, do I believe in more taxes or less taxes? And I think that's why it's very, very difficult. AOC talks about this all the time. She's like, I do deliberately try, and she made me do it, deliberately try to listen to the person talking to me, because then it's a conversation instead of me getting angry, instead of me getting emotional, instead of me feeling attacked, like you're trying to take away my life, take away my rights, try to really listen. Then I am very calm, because only with true dialogue can you even get somewhere. But too often we just feel so attacked that we're not listening. We don't listen to each other. And then, we stay in our own echo chambers. Like, I'll be very honest with you. I don't I don't have any friends who voted for Donald Trump, who believe in Donald Trump. I have one friend who voted for Donald Trump. That's not true. I have one friend who voted for Donald Trump and then regretted it and said, oh, wow, I thought it was going to be different. And I'm like, did you? But like, really, did you? And that was their own merit. We didn't, have a big conversation about it. But no, most of the people I know didn't vote for Trump, don't care for him, think he's horrifying for the country. Most of the people I know have also traveled outside the United States. Most of the people that I know also live in urban city centers. I don't know. So
getting too stuck on Trump is not what I'd want to do, because I think we're talking
sorry.
about no. I mean, like, we're talking about
He's a
problems.
monster.
Well, I would just want to ask one more question about this man who I've heard about every single day since he's been elected. I don't think there's been a single day where I haven't heard the name Trump at some point. Why would someone vote for him? What do you think would motivate someone to vote for him?
Not vote for Hillary.
Not voting for Hillary? You don't think anyone would be enthused about Trump? They would just be appalled at the alternative?
No. That's just one reason. That's one reason. Absolutely. I think one of the reasons I think that he was elected, besides a horrific twist of fate, is I don't think anything gets this volatile unless it's dying. So I personally believe that this is the death cry of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male leadership in the United States that's been there since our founding.
Mm-hmm.
So we have always had, again, besides Obama, we've always had the exact same leader, right, for hundreds of years. Always been male, always been white. And I think it was it Time Magazine or something? Again, you'll have to fact check me on all this stuff. But it was a few years back, and it basically said that according to like the what's the data, population data?
Census?
What is that called? Yes, exactly. That it was like, I think it was like 2012. It was the first year ever where the K through 12, the largest racial population was now like Latino. It was no longer white, right? So what that means is in 40 years, 50 years, the majority of the people, right? The judges, the police officers, the politicians, the lawyers, the doctors, chances are they're going to be majority non-white, right? And we're going to continue in that place. And so I think really this is just a death rattle. So yes, there's people who don't like Hillary. Yes, there's people who believe in Trump, make America great again. But I think there's also people who go, you know what? I'm white. I've always had certain benefits. I love to say that I don't see color and color isn't real and Black people aren't really struggling as much as they are. And yet I fight against it so hard. Why do I fight against it? If it's not real, if it's not a big deal, their oppression, then why am I out there trying to make sure that they don't come up? You know what I mean? Why am I kneeling on their neck if there's not something happening there? So I just think it's the death rattle, which is great, which means, maybe in 40 to 50 years, we'll be much further along. But I think they're just realizing that it's not going to be white is right all the time. And I don't think that's a terrible thing. I think if you can really start seeing people, as a person, then we can kind of get rid of all that nonsense. So.
And then, thank you. The last question I'd want to ask you for now, certainly, is how do you foresee this playing out? What's your expectation over the next couple of days, weeks, months?
God, it's funny that you asked me that, right? Because of everything we've gone through with COVID-19 and how we didn't foresee the last 5-6 months and how our lives have gotten completely turned upside down. We could have never foreseen this. I mean, in a way, I think that's the cool thing about America. She keeps you guessing. You don't know which way she's going to go. You don't know what she's going to do. She's crazy. You don't know how far she's going to push for something. She does stuff all the time that's never been done before that people think is insane. So the thing is, I have seen things that I never thought would happen, like a Trump presidency. So the idea of him getting reelected could potentially happen. The things that we're going through right now, we went through in the 1960s. We went through 60 years ago, right? It's devastating that we're doing it again, because there's all these people who are like, damn, I grew up in a segregated school. I fought for this, I marched for this, and really, we're still talking about this. We're still not there. My thing is, I cannot tell you the days. I just have the hope of the bigger picture. I just have the hope of eventually we will continue to go in this direction of more and more people getting into positions of power, and they just happen to be a minority, right? They just happen to not be white. They're able to bring in their experience, and they're able to bring in change. Because that's the other thing. Again, if I'm Black and I'm saying to someone who's white who makes the decisions, let me tell you about my experience so you can make a change. And the white CEO is like, yeah, sure. There's only so far that's going to actually move the needle. It's really not. And this is why I truly do believe you want diversity on your board. You want people who do not come from the same place, so they can actually bring completely different ideas, completely different experiences, so something bigger can happen. So I just honestly, I think more minorities need to climb up the rungs of power. Someone has to open the door. That's the other key. Allies, that's what we're called, I guess. Just people who believe that people should be treated like people. Guess that's our name, allies. Someone has to open the door. The minorities are able to go in, assume the role that they can absolutely do, and then help more people climb up after them. So I have a lot of faith in the big picture, but the small picture, man, people are angry, and they should be angry. That's why we were talking about this earlier, but it's like, that's why like kind of asking Black people to explain why they're angry is just, it's kind of rude, but also it's like exhausting. And it's good to have the conversation. It's good to understand as much as you can. But it's also like, imagine if you've just been screaming at someone, like let's say your whole life, you know, you've just been screaming this, and people still come up to you and they're like, so what's wrong? What's wrong? I don't understand. I don't understand. Explain it to me. Like, it's even more of an emotional burden to have to explain why you're so traumatized and why you're in so much pain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few days. But MLK died, and I think it was, what, 6 days later? I think it was over 100 U.S. cities rioted. And then 6 days later, we got the Civil Rights Act passed or introduced or something. So what day are we on in these riots?
Well, for the publication of this video, I don't know. I believe we're on the 5th day in reality.
Okay.
But it's been it's a crazy thing, and I'm just trying to get a handle on it by asking people
Yeah.
like yourselves who are an American witness.
I'll say this. I will say this. There are people that I know. This is just another example. Almost all of my friends are rioting. They are out there. They are rioting. They are donating. They're signing petitions. I am also donating and signing petitions from where I am. Elections are coming up, you know, so we're all trying to be cognizant of that. I do know there are a few people that I do know that are Trump supporters, at least on their social medias. Now, again, what is social media? You know, it's not necessarily real life, and I get that. But they've made no mention of anything. They're going about their lives. Their lives are completely normal. They're completely the same. They're not affected by this, right? And I think that is like the most perfect example of all of this. It's like, I'm sitting here screaming at you that there's this huge problem and we need to do something about it. And you're still sitting up in your high tower eating Grey Poupon because your life isn't affected at all. If I die, your life isn't affected, right? If I do this, your life isn't affected. If I do that, you just sit in your ivory tower, and it's wrong. So it's not about this person having to, because this is where white people get mad, because they're like, well, why do I have to, give up this or give up that or give up this? It's just about everyone wants to have common human decency. Everyone wants or should want their fellow man to get to experience what it is to walk around and not be afraid for your life, right? And just know the difference between right and wrong. And it doesn't mean you have to riot. It could just simply be saying to your friends, you know what? I'm with you, or I agree with you, or I see you. I see your pain. I acknowledge your pain. I don't ignore it. You know, I want this for you. I want you to be able to go outside and wear a hoodie and drive your car and not worry about being murdered by a police officer in front of your mom, you know, whatever. Like, I want you to be able to experience that. So I guess that's what I'm saying, is it's not about white people having to give up everything, because that's where a lot of white people get freaked out and angry and feel like they're losing something. And it's like, no, we're just saying other people deserve the same rights. And that shouldn't be hard.
Okay. Thank you for
I talk a
being
lot.
with. It's
I talk a
fine.
lot.
It's been
It
very
happens.
interesting. It's interesting. Thank you for
Has
your
it?
time. Thank you for your time, Pink Tiger.
Bye,
Bye.
honey. Bye.